paints your noose like an old man. He's got you thinking about your death and you are frightened.
To everyone from PoisonedRock, I'm Ada, and today we are from Exumer, and it's a huge honor such a huge band like that. So just go straight to the first questions. Speak a little bit of Exumers and the first, of course, the other members of the band.
You want to have some history, or do you want me just to jump right in where we are right now?
Maybe for the newbie fans, a little bit of history could be just cool because it's a like historical band.
Sure. So I started the band along with our guitarist Ray in 1985. We recorded a demo the same year, and then landed a deal in '86, and also released our first album, Possessed by Fire, that year.
Yeah.
After the release, a few months later, we had a falling out, and I left the band. But then we quickly became friends again, and we were teenagers at the time, so it was kind of silly. And then the guy who had played rhythm guitar for us previously, Paul, jumped in to replace me. We're all still friends. And he recorded the second album in the 80s with them called Rising from the Sea. Then Ray and I and Bernie, who was also a guitar player, we had some bands, and a band actually in the 90s. It was a completely different genre. It was like more rap metal type of thing. From 93 to 98. And then I moved to the United States to pursue my academic career, and then towards 2008, 2007, 2008, Ray and I decided that it was time to reunite and do the band again for real. In the meantime, we had like a reunion show, a one-off at Wacken in 2001, I think. But at that time, we weren't ready to really start the band up again. And then in 2008, we got together, recorded a demo either in 2008 or 2009, and started playing shows. And then a few years later, after some tours, we landed a record deal with Metal Blade Records, and released our first album for them in 2012 called Fire and Damnation, followed by The Raging Tides in 2016, and then in 2019 we released Hostile Defiance. So yeah, the band's been together since '85. I mean, Ray and I are like, we are the founders of the band. But currently we have Mark B on guitars, Matthias Kastner on drums, and Anthony Schiavo on bass. Anthony, we've been friends since I moved to the States 21 years ago. And so that's the current lineup. So that's a little bit of what happened.
Of the story, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, you were one of the first speed metal thrash in Germany. How does it feel to be back on the scene after so many years?
Well, I mean, it's great that we were able to revitalize our career, basically, and were able to record records that were accepted by the fans and reach also new fans, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of bands, when they come back, they have, they first have to figure out what they're gonna do, who their fans are gonna be. The thing is, in the 80s we're teenagers, so then all our fans back then were also our age group, more likely, so teenagers and early 20s. Now, now we're adults, so who's going to buy these records? Because not all the fans from back in the day are still into metal, right? So it was important to go with the times, was basically what I'm hinting at. So when we came back, we knew that we're not going to sound like the band from the 80s. You know,
sure.
We have the same drive and aggression, but we didn't want to re-record our records from the 80s. We wanted to be a current band that can compete with current bands. And and I think that's the reason why we were successful to have a comeback that where we were on a major. I mean, for Metal Blade is one of the 3 big labels, and they extended our contract before it was over because we've successfully sold enough records that they. But that I think that the reason for all of that success is because we thought about not being an old school band, even though we come from that era. We wanted to be a
nowadays
now it's
thrash metal band. And in songwriting, which band influenced, if there is some particular band that maybe could have been influenced your songwriting and composing?
In terms of the music, I mean, we came up in the era where bands like Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, all those bands were very young too. So I think there was a lot of. I know, for instance, that like the American bands looked over to Germany, for instance.
The electronic thrash metal and the Bay Area thrash metal.
So, and a lot of bands from Germany looked over to the States for inspiration. So, our influences are definitely more American bands, but however, we know that we don't necessarily sound like a certain place. Like we're not bound geographically to anything. So I think obviously. We are influenced by early Slayer, early Metallica, early that, but everybody was, everybody sounded very alike. If you listen to early Creator, it's the same. Or if you listen to, early Bottom, sounds like Motorhead.
You can ask which are your influences, something like that, because it comes from all the same period. So.
Right. So
they came from the 70s mostly. So.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that at this point we are our own influence. We are an established
after all these years.
So we have our own sound. My lyrics are always very political and socially driven. There's no surprise. I mean, the very early influences are, like you said, 70s. When I was a teenager, I was influenced by bands like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, punk rock, a lot of punk, hardcore, But that was the extreme music that was there before thrash metal even existed. So those are my influences and my band's influence as well. I mean, Ray's at least.
So Poisoned by Fire has been released in '86. And that was like a huge year for thrash metal.
It was a great year.
What do you which memory do you have of from that period?
Well, I remember 2 things. I remember the second Megadeth coming out and us being completely blown away.
So Poisoned by Fire has been released.
Who was a journalist coming to visit us in the studio while recording Possessed by Fire, and he had an advance tape of Slayer's Raining Blood. So we were recording Possessed by Fire, and he came and visited, I think towards the end of our time, but maybe in the mixing period, and I remember him putting the tape in a boombox at the time. We were at the hotel and we had a boombox and we listened and we're like, wow, I'm completely blown away by Raining Blood, right? On a cassette before
Yeah.
everything was
Oh,
yeah. So
we should be like hearing for the first time such a huge song that became like an hymn for, or you can say, the extreme thrash metal. So yeah,
Yeah.
sure. And Rising the Sea came out 1 year later. There has been an evolution since the first album.
yeah, I mean, you can clearly hear the Slayer. Like when I was in the band, we were highly influenced by Exodus, early Metallica, early Slayer, and Ray started writing a lot more Slayer type of riffs, and so Paul had to adjust to that. So Paul, tried to, emulate what Tom Araya was doing with Slayer's music. So that was the evolution in terms of the style. The problem with Rising from the Sea, I think, was that it felt a little rushed because we didn't take our time to, like, what you hear in Possessed by Fire is basically a year and a half worth of music, right? Work. So, but what you hear on Rising from the Sea is maybe 9 months of work, and on top of that, touring, right? And we started.
You were touring.
Yeah, so that's why the album doesn't sound as whole. It doesn't sound as like Possessed by Fire is very solid in the terms of what it needed to be, and Rising from the Sea, sound-wise and also with the songwriting-wise, sounds not completely finished. And but then you have a lot of people who love Rising from the Sea now, so it worked out. I think those two records have a life of their own in their own right. Some people, a lot of people prefer Possessed by Fire, and I'm not saying it because I wasn't on it. It doesn't matter. Everybody who played on Rising from the Sea is my friend, so it doesn't matter. I don't know. But I think I think the expectation from people were that we would carry that type of vibe from Possessed by Fire into the next album. It didn't happen. It's okay. I think now in the 2000s, our records now, you can hear very consistent.
In fact, this is where I'm going. The next question will be like with Fire and Damnation. So could you speak a lot about this album?
Yeah, Fire and Damnation was, again, Fire and Damnation was our comeback record. And and I chose the title because it kind of represents what we as a band had to go through in the past to arrive at where Fire and Damnation came out. And so it's it kind of represents our trials and tribulations and our journey to come to where we are at when Fire and Damnation was released. So again, on that record, you hear a lot of music that was, it took us a few years to write, but I think it's a solid comeback. The follow-up to Fire and Damnation,
Rising Tide and Hostile Defiance.
Those are records where you can hear that we have been touring, that we gradually honed in.
Yes, because if I'm not wrong, between them there were like 3 years.
So we did 4 years between Fire and Damnation and the Raging Tides, and then 3 years between the Hostile Defiance and that.
Yeah.
So, and the reason also is when we signed with Metal Blade, we told them, this is not a band that needs to put out two records every 2 years and go, there's a cycle with new bands or bands that you're trying to reestablish or something, where you put out records every 2 years and you go on tour 2 years and we said, you don't want to we don't want to put out records if we don't have the material. Right?
Yes, of course. You have to put something that that includes your inspiration, your songwriting. Yourself.
Right.
When
And
you feel sure about that, you just put it on into the wrist. Yeah.
right. So that
Yes.
and we followed that from. They said first of all, Metal Blade was like, okay, no problem. You tell us when you release,
Yeah.
when you want to, and we release it. And obviously, there's a business side of this, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
if the records don't sell, then you got to come up with something. But after the Raging Tides, that was a very successful record for us.
Yeah.
Metal Blade said, okay, this is a good formula. You bring us music. Because the thing is, also the fans are ready at that point.
Yeah.
When you have a 3-4 year gap, we don't, the first gap was kind of long, but I think that's why the Raging Tides was a very successful record. And then I think 3 years is a good time for everyone where you're not
You took your
constantly,
time.
you're not constantly, but you also don't let the fans forget. At this point, I think we found a good formula in terms of when to record and when to release.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And gather songs. So so for us now, it really is okay. When we have our material, we know we got to go and do this now. Then we put quality material together, and then we'll have a quality record. And I think Hostile Defiance, I mean, it entered the German charts at 42. That's all the record charts. That's like anybody from Mariah Carey to whatever.
So the chart, like, between pop and all the type of the genre of metal of music.
It's album charts. So it's the German album charts, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So for a little band that had 2 records in the 80s to come to a point where we were album of the month in Rock Hard magazine in Germany. We entered the charts at 42. That's a big accomplishment. And we're not a band that, again, we don't tour all the time. We tour consistent, but we don't tour every 2 weeks. We do 1 or 2 long tours in the year.
That's really
festivals, right?
Of course.
So
during the festival.
Yeah, so all our planning, all the things that we've tried to do in a way where we can bring the band back, where it works for us and it works for the fans, and I think it paid off, to be patient and to do everything. Because I've seen a lot of reunions with bands that didn't really work out, that
unfortunately,
that where maybe they couldn't find the right music for the time,
maybe even the time changing, maybe even the person itself.
Right. So I think it paid off for us to be patient, to do everything in a manner where we can stand behind the product, right?
Like we can say, like, in a rational way.
Yeah.
That's great. And how was the first reaction of the fan when they saw that you were just come back?
The first reactions?
Yeah.
I mean, the first 2009 and 2010, we just played shows, basically, because everybody wanted to have the band and see the band, and we were busy playing. We did a lot of stuff in Europe. We played in Los Angeles. We played, everywhere. But then we were ready to write and record, which we did then in 2011. And the reception for Violent Damnation was really great, because we went on to play South America, Mexico, and so it, I think people were curious. People were like, "Wow, how do they sound now after all this time?" So
especially the oldest fans.
Yes, and I mean, it's cool now. I always say that to everyone. I'm like, now we have multi-generational fans coming to the show. I'm like, people who are as old as us, maybe older than us, and then
teenagers.
Yeah, I was like, and the funny thing is that teenagers know more about details that I already forgot. then
I know.
yeah.
I, yeah, I know very well. And speaking about the contemporary that trash metal scenario, what do you think about this new band? I mean, not new band. How is in general for you the trash metal scenario of these
Yeah. So I think
years?
there's a lot of talented bands, um, and you know, in the old guard is still going strong. You know, whether you have Destruction Creator and
Yeah.
us and whoever, Sodom and Tankard,
Yes.
and
Historical band as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
or Testament over here, and you know whoever
Sealer.
the older bands going strong. But you do have a strong underground and up and coming thrash scene. The thing that I always find um, that is difficult for these newer bands is to find their own sound, right?
Yeah, because they always take inspiration from the the huge band from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Every time is the same answer. Which are your influences? And they say the same band. Yeah.
so to me, like I give you an example. When I was growing up, none of the bands sounded the same.
Yeah.
Metallica didn't sound like Slayer. Slayer didn't sound like Venom. Venom didn't sound like,
Completely.
you know, like Celtic Frost didn't sound like Possessed. Every record that we bought basically was with a band that had a different sound. Now, partially, it's because when these bands went into the studio, the producers and the recording engineers didn't know what it was. So there was no one size fits all sound.
Yeah.
Like now, every band sounds the same because the production is the same. There's a very uniform production. Back then, I remember, like, you know, when we first recorded our very first demo, the guy never heard anything like that before. You know?
That's great.
So,
That's great.
but now it's different, right? I mean, now
Yes.
everything is, everybody knows everything. So I think, unfortunately, for a lot of young bands, they then get into a genre and they sound like the next band and the next band, and everything sounds the same.
Yes, yes. When you listen, for example, a new thrash metal, when I'm doing an example, you can hear, oh, you for example, said, oh, he has the same voice, the singer of Overkill, he has the same riff of Marty Friedman. There is always something that reminds you, because of course they grew up with those bands. So, and before, at the time you were started, there wasn't this type of music. No. There was just hard rock. So you basically invented and created it, put it in on the music field, something that were new. Yeah. And it's still going on. This is the one of the most beautiful things. Yeah.
That's great. But I think it's a great. It's great that we were able to influence new musicians and upcoming musicians, and I think that, you know, every genre, regardless of what, needs new people to carry on the music.
Sure, for sure.
But one day, like Slayer, you could never imagine that there's not going to be a Slayer, but they stopped, they retired. You know, and one day Metallica will retire. Yeah, so you need young bands that carry on with this music. You know?
Yes,
so I appreciate that.
So a source of legacy that they will just keep on going. Yeah. And I saw, if I'm not wrong, that you have other projects after beyond Exumer.
Right? Yeah. I have a side project that's called Skull Pit, and it's with a friend of mine from Japan, Tatsu Mikami. He's the bass player and the songwriter for Church of Misery, which is a doom metal band of Japan. We met online. I love his band, and he one day wrote me online and said, I love Exumer, and I used to be in a thrash band 25 years ago. And I was like, really? And so we started talking online. And then a few years into our friendship online, he said, I have these songs that are like more like old Venom, Motorhead, new wave
Yeah.
heavy metal. And I said, "Oh wow, that's one of my favorite genres that time, right? Early
Yeah,
late
sure.
'70s, early '80s." Um, and he said, "Why don't you give the music a listen and see if you can have some ideas for lyrics and vocals?" I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
And so I started listening to it. I liked it, and then we developed a few songs, demoed a few songs. He wrote, he sent me the files here. I demoed my vocals, sent them back, and then we had like 10 songs all of a sudden.
That's
And
great.
yeah, and then
Yeah,
we said,
it's
okay, let's see what we can do. So he went and recorded everything. Um, with some musicians in Tokyo. And I recorded my vocals with a friend of mine, Mitz. He used to be a guitar player for Madball, and he produces a lot of stuff. And we put it together. We sent it around. Metal Blades thought it was interesting, and then they put out the record 2 years ago. We haven't done
great.
anything since, but I mean, it's a project. It's not like, we don't
It's a
tour.
it's a side project. A
Yeah.
side project. That's amazing. We spoke already about Exumer influences that basically are just like from the 80s, so from the 70s. I wanted to ask you your own influences. Of course, I'm meaning not from like, for example, in the band, but as a man from so when you were young until now, which bands formed you as human being?
Yeah. So, when I was a very young child, uh, uh, I was told by my uncle, who's a big John Coltrane and Miles Davis fan, that when he was babysitting me when I was 2, he would play those jazz records, and I would go to the turntable and start playing with the turntable. For a time he would come and stay with my mom and my dad, and he would play these records over and over and over again. So I think it must have stuck in my head somehow, somewhere in my brain. And then my dad, on the other hand, he had anything from Louis Armstrong to the first Led Zeppelin record.
Yeah.
So that's my early childhood. And then I was very much influenced. I got into sports a lot, but then around when I was 11 years old, everything switched, and I started, buying records, my own records. And the first records were like Manfred Mann's Earth Band and maybe Neil Young, but then I saw Queen, stuff like that, but then I discovered Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and but at the same time, when I was like 11, I saw punk rock on television.
Oh my god.
Wow, what is that? This is awesome. And
The English punk rock, the
yeah,
American.
it was punk rock, and it was like 1979.
Pistols, Clash.
Yeah, everything, and like that. And I was like, this is great. So I started buying that. And then one day, so by the time I was 12, I had music like traditional rock and hard rock, but also punk rock, and one huge influence from me was Frank Zappa. And
Yeah, you combine this and
Yeah,
trash
yeah.
them out.
yeah, and then shortly thereafter, the new wave of British heavy metal started to hit, and then
Yeah.
got into that, and the rest you know. But I was never, when I was growing up, musically there was no limit. And to this day, I have a room full of vinyl records. Vinyl, like, I'm an
Yeah.
avid collector, and I have all genres: rock, hard rock, black metal, punk, thrash metal, death metal, doom metal, anything, reggae, whatever. A lot of jazz, blues, whatever there is. To me, I don't have these limits in my head. If I like something,
Yeah,
I have Michael Jackson. Like
it's something. It's really something that I noticed with when I spoke with that the biggest band, for example, and I ask their influences, most of the time they don't listen just metal. They just listen jazz. Even that metal band, they just say, no, I listen jazz. So it's like, no, for me that I'm younger, it's like a cool things to know, because even the who brought this genre into the mind, to the music field,
Right.
it came from totally another type of music, and this could be a good advice for the young generation.
Yeah.
To not focus only to thrash metal, death metal, black metal, but also explore what is around.
Again, you got to remember, until the new wave of British heavy metal, there was no metal that was kind of like really hard hitting. There was hard rock, really.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was the hardest thing there was outside of punk and hard. You had to listen to other stuff because, like, also, like, if you think about it, I was a child in the 70s, right? But if you turned on the radio, soul and funk music was amazing. Like, it was really, there was no synthesizers in that sense. You know, everybody was playing. Everything
playing.
Yeah, everybody's playing guitars and slapping the bass and having amazing rhythms. So, you know, it's different now because everything sounds like a formula these days.
Yes, and also is also more accessible to everyone.
So
yeah.
I think just like you said, it's important for young people to keep their minds open and receive other things, because if you just listen to metal or only extreme music, there's so much stuff that you're missing. And then it's weird to me because life is not one thing, right? I mean, life is many things. Your life is not just one thing. You have a family, you have a job, maybe you do art, whatever it is. So they're right there. You have 10 different things already.
Yeah, sure.
Why limit yourself with music? I don't know.
That's amazing. And you were spoken. Usually, I do these questions with albums and or song or whatever. But you just mentioned that you have a lot of vinyls.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to pick up, this is a hard one, but 5 vinyl that you maybe just came right now through your mind, which will they be? Even different genre is not a problem.
So, I would say I start off with something that influenced me was when extreme music started to take off. I would say Venom black metal. I would say, I would say Cro-Mags, The Age of Quarrel. I would say Frank Zappa, Shake Your Booty. That's 3.
Yeah.
Right. Then I would. Yeah. Then I would say John Coltrane, Love Supreme.
Okay.
And then I would say Black Sabbath.
The classical. Yeah, that's amazing. And of course you have a lot of history. Just a moment in particular of there could be touring during the recording or the songwriting, whatever, that you remember most of. It could be funny or just a moment that stayed in you for all these years.
Well, yeah. When we first came back to play live as a band, and really being a band again, we were invited to play in LA for the first time. This is in 2009, and when we looked at the costs associated with the promoter had to put out, we were like, I called the promoter and I said, listen, I see, it's a lot of money you're putting out, and we have never played in the United States before, and I don't want you to lose any money, right? Because you're putting out thousands and thousands of dollars here. And he was like, there was 2 people. they said, no, don't worry about it. I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. You're going to headline a festival with a lot of young bands from LA. None of them I've ever heard of. And I said, okay. And then I called them again. I said, listen, now it's the time to say, we're canceling this with Exumer. We're just going to take somebody from LA. I said, no. All right. So long story short, we fly to LA. Everything is cool. We settled in. We got there the day before the show because we wanted to rehearse a little, play a little, and get acclimated.
Yes, for sure.
And, yeah, so we got there on a Friday. The show's on a Saturday or Thursday. We get there, and the show's on a Friday. Whatever. It was on a weekend, and they drive us to the venue, and on the strip there's lots of shows all the time, right? So you can never know who's gonna be like going to what. So I see this line of people starting way down in the beginning of where we driving up to the venue. And I was like, oh wow, there must be a couple of things going on here. I'm like, yeah, probably another show. Like who else is playing? They're like, so the one of the promoters turned around and they're like, no, they're here for you. And
wow.
I was like, what? What are you saying? He's like, no, that's the line to the show, to the festival. And they're here for you because the bands that were supporting us were all from the area.
The classical thrash area,
yeah. And I was like, that's insane. And that show was probably the craziest show I've ever played in my life. It was, people were diving from the balcony into the crowd.
My God.
The minute we started playing, the place just exploded. I mean, bodies everywhere. People were singing our songs. Now, mind you, this is 3 years before Fire and Damnation was released. This is in 2009. It's the first tour we're back, and we played,
the oldest album. Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. And like, it was the craziest night. I mean, then we went back to LA 5 years later, and same thing, awesome show. But that first impression I had, and the surprise, I will never forget, because it was like first time in the United States, first time in LA, and right off the bat, it was, the place held 850 people, and they oversold it by 250, I think. So it was like close to 1,200 people with the guests. There was nowhere to stand, nowhere, nothing. So that was truly
amazing. So we are almost the last questions. That of course is the common one. The future plans of Exumer.
Yeah, well, lived through this pandemic successful.
Just put away those pandemics.
Yeah.
Pretend that is going on soon.
Okay, so we were going to start writing and playing and all that all throughout this year. So we decided that we're taking off this year, but we're also taking off next year from playing live because we don't really know where this is going. But next year we're gonna write the record, record the new record, and then we're gonna release it in 2022, and that's when we're gonna start touring. Because at that point, I think
the COVID will be disappeared completely, and you will be free of playing.
When this started, we wanted to be realistic, because we just had we are with a new booking agency in Europe, a good, strong, bigger one, and we didn't want to say, oh, we're coming in winter of 2020 or spring of 2021. No. So we said, you know what? This is the plan. 2020, we chill out. 2021, we write the record, record the record,
this is a good technique.
Yeah, and
because
then
it's really.
it makes the most sense to us. I don't know.
Yes, for sure.
Every
Because it's almost most festival and especially most gigs, because many bands booked for the winter and the spring, and they were already postponed because
Right, everything is 1 year postponed. So for us,
yeah, if in 2022, I guess the music will return completely to be like.
right,
I think crowd of people will go like
Right.
like a zombie to everywhere. I think yeah.
so that's and I see bands that are playing now in front of like 200, like they book venues where you can fit 1,500 people in, but there's only 300 people allowed, and there's just like holes everywhere. Like there's,
Yes,
it's not a
which
show.
which is the meanings of going to a gigs. If
Yeah.
you don't make noise, you don't.
People are watching you like they're watching a movie, but it's not a movie. Especially
Yes,
thrash
No,
metal
no.
is a very interactional thing, right? So
It's diving. Yes, of
energy.
course.
I put out energy, you give me energy back, so it goes non-stop.
Yes, because if you just can see a fan that is like is watching a movie, you just feel like you're watching a movie too. So you
Yeah.
can maybe sit on a chair and play an acoustic song.
Right. It's not the same, and
Yeah. So,
well, it doesn't work with our live act anyway. So that's what we decided. I think we did the right thing.
yes.
We're not. We're
I
not.
agree with that.
We're not in a position where we have to rely on the music to make our livelihood. We're not a hobby band, but we have different sources of income. And when we do the band, we go on full tours, we do everything like every other band, but I'm not reliant on playing 500 shows, like a year. Or 365 shows a year. I don't have to do. I can play 50 shows a year and it's fine. Because that's the way we run the band. So everything is cool. And it actually fits the timeline, because if you think about it, so as I was saying, it kind of fits into our schedule as well, because there'll be a gap between Hostile Defiance and the new record, which will be 3 years, and then it all worked out anyway. The only thing that we didn't do is to play live, which kind of hurts, but it's also, you just got to do, you got to adjust to what's going on.
So the next time you will play, you will see the double line of people waiting for. And you see, this is for us, because there will be the new generation, the newer, the like all type of generation that with children. It will be funny. So thanks, man, for being with us, and really was a pleasure interviewing one of the first thrash metal band in the world. We can say that from the Teutonical thrash metal. And it's really an honor, and I think that this interview will be like, really people will like, oh my god, Exumer, what the hell. So in fact I didn't say anything to the fans. It will be a surprise.
Okay.
So just a message to your follower, your fans and our followers. I changed it.
Thank you for being with us for 35 years at this point.
I got 35 years, almost my age.
Yeah. So and let's hope we all are safe, and we are looking forward to seeing everybody when we go on tour.
Okay, so thank you so much, and see you soon. I hope in some festival, and I will be maybe someone in the crowd. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Sticks and stones will break some bones. You will have to fight. Raging on the waves of pain. Oaths of war tonight. Deadly forces taking over. Murder means delight. Winds of gas are blowing strong, tearing out your life. to the preacher during the sermon.